You know, when we think about famous people from history, their stories can feel like they're set in stone. Just a list of facts, right? But what if I told you that how a story is told is just as important as the story itself? Today, we're going to dig into the life of a legendary inventor, but we're also going to take apart how that legend was built piece by piece. So this is what we're looking at today, an article by Vicky Baez. And it asks a really big question right there in the title. But for our purposes, we're actually going to look past that question and focus on something else, how the author goes about trying to answer it. And that right there is the real heart of what we're talking about. How does this happen? It's not just about what happened in Tesla's life. It's about the very specific, very deliberate choices a writer makes to shape how we see him, to build a story that feels larger than life. To really get this, we've got to open up what you might call the biographer's toolkit. See, every author has a set of tools they use to put a life story together. And once you learn how to spot them, I promise, you'll never read a biography the same way again. Because what you're reading isn't just a flow of information. It's an act of architecture. The author is carefully choosing and arranging all these different pieces to construct a very specific version of a person for you to see. So what's in this toolkit? What are these building blocks? Well, it starts with the basics you'd expect. Factual info, right? Then you've got details about the world they lived in, the context. And then there's this really crucial stuff, direct quotes. Using a person's exact words to give them a personality and back up the writer's point of view. Okay, so you have the blocks, but you still need a blueprint to build the house, right? Writers organize these elements in a few key ways. They can just tell you what happened in the order it happened. That's chronological. They can put two people side by side to compare and contrast them, or they can connect the dots to show you cause and effect. Let's see how this actually plays out. The main drama in this article, the real engine of the story, is the rivalry between Nikola Tesla and Thomas Edison. And this conflict, it's the perfect stage for the author to use every single tool we just talked about. First, the author just lays out the timeline, simple chronological order. In 1884, Tesla shows up, letter in hand, ready to work for the great Edison. Then, bam, just 1 year later, he's out the door over a huge money dispute. And by 1887, he's starting his own company, becoming a direct rival. That timeline creates a really clear, fast-moving story of ambition and betrayal. Next, the author pulls out a really powerful tool, comparison and contrast. Tesla isn't just an inventor here, he's labeled the visionary, a guy who could build entire machines in his head. Edison, on the other hand, is framed as the tinkerer, a guy who had to try things over and over again. Now, that's not just describing their work styles, it's a subtle way of framing their entire characters. And this right here, wow. This is a masterclass in cause and effect. The cause? Edison supposedly dangles a $50,000 bonus in front of Tesla. Tesla pulls it off. The effect? Edison laughs it off with this killer line. The ultimate effect? Tesla quits on the spot. That one quote does so much work. It paints Edison as dismissive and lights the fuse for their entire rivalry. So this personal beef, it just explodes into a full-on technological showdown, the war of the currents. The author lays it out super clearly. Edison's DC versus Tesla's AC. By framing it this way, a complex technical debate becomes a high-stakes drama with a clear winner. Tesla, whose AC system, well, it's the system that powers our world today. Okay, let's take a breath. We've seen the tools, we've seen how they're used. Now, let's just step back for a second and look at the big picture. What's the final effect of all these choices the author made? I mean, really think about it. The author didn't just dump a list of facts on you. They chose them, they arranged them. So how does the story they built, the timeline, those comparisons, that brutal quote, how does it actually make you feel about Nikola Tesla? Well, by putting Tesla up against the rich and famous Edison, and by really focusing on that injustice of the broken promise, the author crafts a classic, compelling underdog story. Tesla becomes this misunderstood genius, and you just can't help but root for him. And that whole visionary versus tinker comparison is so important. It's not just about who was more efficient. It frames Tesla's genius as something almost mystical, something effortless and unique, compared to Edison's hard, grinding work. This choice elevates Tesla from just a smart guy to a legendary, one-of-a-kind mind. All right, so here's the cool part. Understanding all this stuff, it basically gives you a new superpower. It lets you read any article, any biography, any story on a completely different and much deeper level. Because the big takeaway here isn't really about Tesla or Edison. It's about being a smarter, more critical reader. When you understand how the story is being built, the structure, the word choice, all of it, you can see the why behind it so much more clearly. You can see the author's goal and decide for yourself what you think. So I'm going to leave you where the article started, with that big question, but with a new twist. Now that you know how this particular legend was put together, now that you've seen how the narrative was shaped to create this underdog hero, does it change your answer? Does it make you question if there even is a single greatest inventor? Definitely something to think about.